Hey, it's Jelly, and I fucked up. So some of you may know that I released a documentary on Haiti and the last century of history and how it culminated in the current gang situation, and I forgot what was both my favorite and arguably the most important part of the doc. I had it all edited and pretty, but I just forgot to put it in the final render. But my therapist, Bob Ross, tells me that we don't make mistakes, just happy accidents. So the cool part about this is that you get a short, easily referenceable video about the grassroots movement that grew in opposition to the gangs. So anyway, if you're new here, hi. Enjoy the following snippet, and if you learn something, you probably need to check out the full doc linked in the description, and also I'm uploading the complete director's cut to my Patreon. And for the record, this section goes after the Blackwater section and before the Mibale section. So without further ado. One afternoon in September 2022, a resident of Turgeau caught a young man in the act of stealing a battery from a vehicle in a private yard. Armed only with his tools, the young man was severely beaten, but the citizens still decided to call the police to retrieve him. When they arrived at the scene, the officers in a white and blue pickup truck then proceeded to continue brutalizing the young man in the back of the vehicle. According to observations by an Aibo Post journalist, as he was about to leave the scene, one of the policemen turned to the crowd with a disapproving look and said, "You have a ravine nearby and you're calling the police for a thief?" So let's turn our attention to the neighborhood of Kape. On April 24, 2023, the Haitian National Police received an alert from the Intelligence and Operations Center to be on the lookout for armed men in the area. Early that morning, a little bit over a dozen lightly armed gang members were traveling through the neighborhood in a minibus on their way to meet with an allied gang when they were stopped by the Haitian National Police. During the search of the vehicle, the police found and seized handguns, munitions, magazines, and various illicit substances. The suspects were then arrested and taken to the Kape sub-police station. Meanwhile, a crowd of bystanders had accumulated, and in a single moment, the weight of decades of institutional impotence and neglect finally came crashing down on the neighborhood of Kape. The crowd broke into the sub-police station and did a mass unarrest of suspected gang members before stoning them all in front of the police station and lighting their corpses on fire in the middle of the street while the police looked on helplessly. Only the bus driver and the onboard mechanic were spared, as many times drivers of local transit like taxis, buses, and tap-taps aren't actually gang-affiliated, rather coerced into cooperation. And this is the birth of modern Bois-Calais. Some say that this event acted as a catalyst within the public consciousness, dispelling the myth of the gang's invincibility.
For acting all shit, nigga. You done crossed the line. See, it don't cost a dime. Somebody toss my nine.
That was crazy.
What in the hell was that? Was that about me?
Man.
The next day, the streets would be filled with calls for Operation Filet Machete, or Operation Let's Sharpen Those Machetes. The implication here being that the machete is an extremely common field tool as well as a self-defense implement, implying that the masses shouldn't remain passive in the face of the gangs. And from then on, people began to engage a lot more critically about the role and the effectiveness of the police.
You lost 2 soldiers, is that with the guy that we were fighting last night? He said, no, we lost 2 soldiers that we sent to buy guns, and the police intercepted them, and then they took all the money. The population took them over and killed them. When I came out of the compound, they took me out. That's when I find out that it was a police officer and a guy who works for the government. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
So this is how corrupt this country is.
Now, this needs to be distinguished from another very similar form of resistance in the form of neighborhood brigades. Now, these are also vigilante groups of lightly armed civilians who fight against the impositions of the local gangs. Rather than run into the surrounding neighborhoods when the gangs begin their shock and awe campaign, some communities have opted for self-isolation, barricading roads and improvising spike strips.
This is the trailer of a truck that's flipped on its side, basically blocking this street. And then look at this one over here. They've used basically a portion of what looks like a cement truck and just put it right at the entry to their neighborhood. It's just anything they can do, so it seems, to slow down any gang activity, any kidnappers who would come in and not then easily have a way to get out.
They dig in and they shoot back. The difference, you see, is in ideology, or perhaps maybe a lack thereof. By my assessment, and other Haitians can correct me if I'm wrong on this one, the difference between a typical neighborhood brigade and let's call it a Bois-Calais coalition is whether or not the group will mobilize offensively in pursuit of justice. The term bois calé, when literally translated, means peeled wood. Now, the particularly gutter-minded among you may recall that in American slang, wood is often a euphemism for phallus. Bois, or wood in Creole, is used in the exact same way. So if somebody takes a peeled wood approach to justice, just know that you do not want to be the offending party. Now, critics of the paradigm are not inherently pro-gang, in fact, quite the opposite. The problem is that in any such operation where you administer punishment without the necessary evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the offending party is guilty, then you introduce the possibility for innocent people to get caught up in lynch mobs. The argument isn't that the criminal should go free. It's more an admonition against actions without thoughts. And an unintended byproduct of this is that amidst the chaos of the current displacement crises, many communities further from the capital are now becoming increasingly suspicious of newcomers. If one of the displacees doesn't have someone to vouch for them, they could very well get lynched as a potential gang member. I don't have confirmation on any such cases because getting independent investigations and verifications is a bit tough at the moment, and it almost goes without saying that I will never take the Haitian government's words at face value, and cops are cops wherever you go, so we operate on Murphy's Law around here. If something can go wrong, most of the time we can kinda assume it's already happened by now. So when you look into the varying ideologies of Haitian people, you'll find that the word amnesty can become the center of very heated discussions. I remember a quote from a Haitian police officer who once said, "Amnesty is a French word. In Creole, we say bois calé." The idea of amnesty for those who lay down their weapons was always almost jokingly entertained as a possibility to end the current conflict. The problem is that doing so would seriously undermine the credibility of the Haitian government to the citizenry at large. Don't get it confused. Almost nobody affected by the current ongoing warfare wants amnesty for the gang members. If amnesty were to be announced, it would almost certainly be followed by mass protests, and then, in a symphony of irony, the gangs and the police would team up like shonen protagonists and massacre the dissidents with the power of friendship. However, it is important to remember that the Vivre Ensemble coalition was formed opportunistically and not from a shared ideology, meaning that there remains a continuous power struggle within the entity collectively referred to as Vivre Ensemble. So offering concessions to one or more parties involved could cause the organization to begin to collapse from within, regardless of how truthful those concessions really were. It's not a particularly feasible or popular option. I do, however, think that it's still something to be aware of.
And that's that on that. If you learned something new about Haiti in the last 7 or 8 minutes, then you owe it to yourself to learn more about this deeply complex situation that is going down in Port-au-Prince. So anyway, that's Wonderwall, baby. Peace.